Today, we are counting down the top 10 most valuable Marvel comics of the year 1967. These are the books with the highest prices in the Overstreet Annual Price Guide, and they are the most historically important books of the year. Let's count them down, starting with number 10 of the year is X-Men number 28. This book features the first appearance of the Banshee, and this is a major villain of the X-Men. Werner Roth was the cover artist. And we also get the first appearance of the one-shot character, the Ogre. This comic ranks 10th of the year, 281st most valuable Marvel comic of the 1960s. It's been growing quickly on the CGC census. There are now almost 1,200 copies graded by CGC in all conditions combined. But if you look at the really high end, there are 31 copies graded 9.6 or higher on the CGC census. 125 copies have been sold by Heritage Auctions since the year 2000. Here's the cover, 12-cent cover price, bold red background. Using the Overstreet Annual Price Guide year by year, we can check out the growth of prices in all conditions. So you can see in the last decade, the book's been a fairly slow mover in lower grades. However, in top grade, it's gone up about 50%. So now to make the top 10 of the year, you have to be worth at least $600, which is the case here for a 9.2 raw copy. On the census, there are 5 9.8s, 26 9.6s. There is a UK price for it, and there's only a few copies graded, the highest being an 8.5. Number 9 book of the year is Fantastic Four, number 66. This book getting a lot of attention in recent years. It's part of the two-part origin of him, better known as Warlock, and the story begins in this issue. We've got Jack Kirby cover and art, and also Joe Sinnott art. Ranks 9th of the year, 280th of the decade. And we have 952 copies graded in total, 15 grading 9.6 or higher. Heritage has now sold 136 copies. Black background cover, making this a tough one to find in super high grade. The Overstreet Price Guide, small but steady growth in all grades in the last few years. Now a $600 book. On the census, there are 6 9.8s and 9 9.6s. There is only one of a second printing out there. So I don't have the details to verify how you tell the difference, but that's definitely an overlooked book. So that could be definitely undervalued if you can go find the second printing of this book from 1967. Number 8 is Amazing Spider-Man 51. This book features the second appearance of the villain Kingpin. We've got cover art by John Romita Sr. The book ranks 8th of the year and 276th of the decade. There are over 1,300 copies now graded this book, with 26 super high grade copies. Heritage has sold 184. Another black background cover, which was common at this time, but makes them tough to find in high grades. This book had a big spike just in the last year alone. Still very affordable, these books in lower grades. It had a $100 jump in 9.2, now $650 book. There are 3 9.8s and 23 9.6s, a bunch more of the UK price variants graded, but the highest is a 9.2. Number 7, Marvel Superheroes, number 12. This square-bound book had a hefty 25-cent cover price when comics were regularly 12 cents, but it was double thickness, so you still got your money's worth in reading material. This key issue is the origin and first appearance of the new Captain Marvel from Marvel Comics, not to be confused with the classic character from the 1940s. This is the first issue also of this particular title. The book was renamed Marvel Superheroes, and it was originally called Fantasy Masterpieces. We have Gene Colan cover art and interior on this book. This book also features some classic reprint stories of some of the classic Golden Age heroes from Marvel and Timely Comics. Ranks 275th of the decade. There are 1,720 copies graded by CGC, 69.6s or higher. Even though it's a square-bound book, surprisingly, there's more high-grade copies surviving. Heritage has sold 220 copies of this book with a white background cover. And in the Overstreet Price Guide in low grades in recent years, the book is completely stalled, but still affordable. And in high grades has now moved up to $675. There are 18 9.8s of this book and 42 9.6s. No UK price variants. Next on our countdown, in 6th place is X-Men 35. A lot of people really like this cover. This is the only issue of X-Men to ever feature Spider-Man on the cover. This issue also gives us the first appearance of the Changeling. Dan Adkins is the cover artist for this book. It ranks 271st most valuable of the decade. There's now over 1,100 copies graded, 26 super high grade copies, and Heritage has sold 125, another black background cover. In the Overstreet price guide, we can see the growth in the last decade has been very small in low grades. In fact, it was kind of dropping for a bit down in 2013, but it's slowly making its way back up in low grades. But high grade, the book has almost doubled in the last 15 years, starting to pick up speed now. On the census, there are 6 9.8s and 20 9.6s. There is a bunch of UK price variants, but the highest graded is an 8.0. Next, we have number 5 is Tales to Astonish, number 93. This is the first Hulk versus Silver Surfer story, and it's the first full crossover story of the Silver Surfer outside of his original run in Fantastic Four. So a lot of interest in this book. Marie Severin art on this. We also have a Submariner story with Dan Adkins art, and the cover is by Severin. And it ranks 280th of the decade. Almost 1,200 copies now graded by CGC and 41 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 99. Nice, bold cover. In the Overstreet price guide, this book has shown nice growth in the last decade, still quite affordable in low grades, but the book has almost doubled in the last decade. And in higher grades, the book has more than doubled in the last decade, now $725. On the census, there are 11 9.8s and 30 9.6s. A bunch of the UK price variants. The highest graded is a 9.0. Next, we come up to an interesting book on the list. This is probably the last Marvel Western to ever make the top 10 of a year. We have Ghost Rider number 1. And this is not the supernatural character. This is the Western title. And this series features the first appearance and origin of the new Ghost Rider with Dick Ayers cover art. This Western genre title would run only 7 issues, and there are Kid Colt reprints in the first 6. The book ranks 4th of the year and 268th most valuable of the decade. There are 420 copies graded, but only 3 9.6 or higher, extremely rare in highest grades. Another dark background cover. Heritage has sold 50 copies of this book. In the Overstreet price guide, this book has skyrocketed in the last year. It has more than doubled in all grades in just a single year. And so now we have an $800 book. On the census, there are 3 9.6s and 15 9.4s. There's only a couple UK price variants graded, none of them high grade at all. Number 3 of the year is Amazing Spider-Man, number 46. This is the origin and first appearance of the Shocker. John Romita senior cover and art, ranks 3rd of the year, 266th of the decade. The Shocker has become more of a major villain since started appearing in Spider-Man movies with Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. Shooting prices up higher. Almost 1,800 copies graded, 33 high-grade copies, 159 sold at Heritage. And in the Overstreet price guide, a big bump in all grades in the last year alone. So all grades are a good investment at this moment. It's now a $900 book. There are 8 9.8s and 25 9.6s. Lots of the UK price variants graded, including a 9.4. Next on our countdown, in 2nd place, is Fantastic Four, number 67. This is the origin and brief first appearance of him, later to be known as Adam Warlock. We have Jack Kirby cover art here. White cover makes this a tough book to find in high grades. It ranks number 2 of the year, 210th of the decade. Lots of copies graded on this major key. Almost 2,800 copies with 50 9.6s or higher. 219 sold at Heritage. Bold white creamy background cover on this one. And this book also skyrocketing just in the last year alone. Still affordable in low grades if you can find them here. But again, eBay prices are probably going to be a lot higher since this is a very hot book. So check out eBay and gpanalysis.com if you want to see how the graded copies of all of these books are doing, setting higher price records, especially 9.8s, of course. This is now a $1,200 book. On the census, there are 12 9.8s, 38 9.6s, and an incredible 90 9.4s. There are lots of UK price variants graded, but the highest is a 9.0. And that brings us to the #1 most important and valuable Marvel comic of 1967. And by far, it's way ahead of the pack. It's Amazing Spider-Man #50, the first appearance of the Kingpin. And we also get Spider-Man's origin retold in this issue. And Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon even make cameo appearances in this issue with cover art by John Romita Sr. #1 of the year, 60th of the decade. And the numbers are skyrocketing on the CGC census. Over 4,500 copies graded, 22 high grade, 471 sold through Heritage. Classic red cover, one of the most iconic Marvel covers of the 60s, in fact. And skyrocketing. This book's been a good investment for a number of years now. And looking at the last decade specifically, the book has more than doubled in lowest grades, and the book has gone 2.5 times in higher grades. This is now a $4,000 book. There are 7 9.8s and 15 9.6s. There's lots of the UK price variants graded, 81 of them, but still the highest is only a 9.0. Now let's take the top 10 books of the year and look at them on the CGC census, and we're going to compare them all, which are the most common and the rare ones on the census. Well, the book by far with the most copies graded is the Spider-Man 50. That's followed by Fantastic Four 67, and then Spider-Man 46. So all the books have a pretty good high number graded. The Ghost Rider #1, being a Western book, is much lower than the rest as expected, with only 420. The superhero book with the lowest graded copies is actually Fantastic Four 66, with less than 1,000 copies graded. If we look at the high end, every book on this list has numerous 9.8s graded, except the Ghost Rider #1. Again, as expected, it has fewer high graded copies. But if we look at the superhero books, it actually appears that Fantastic Four 66 and Spider-Man 51 are on the low end for number of copies at the very high end. But none of these books are super rare, but for their age, not tons of copies graded. So there you go, the top books of Marvel 1967. This series continues every week, so please subscribe to this channel, and thank you for watching.